It's just a few days since the incident on Clapham Common and the massive outcry over the harassment of women and how women are treated in our society here in Britain. And a lot of politicians are jumping on the bandwagon, making their own comments and their serious concern about this issue. Because I'm proposing to run for Mayor of Greater Manchester, in one sense, am compelled to make some kind of comment to at least share my thoughts and my ideas about this issue, just to answer anyone who has a question. What do I think about the issue? And I would like to address that in a sense with a history lesson, the history of harassment, at least as I see it. I'm not an expert, I'm not an academic, I never went to Oxford or Cambridge or even Manchester University to study the history of harassment and the history of sexual relations or anything like that. I've just mulled it over many, many, many years and tried to ponder why. Where did it come from? Why are strong, smart women still treated like shit? I say history lesson, and you might think, okay, let's take the history right back to, say, women's liberation in the 1960s. I believe we should go a lot farther back in time. I believe we should go maybe 2,000 years back in time. And in my opinion, it begins with the arrival of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire brings with it the Greco-Roman culture of absolute stark-raving terror of women, especially the Greeks, who were, to say the least, utterly shit scared of strong, independent women. That's why they're the ones who gave birth to the legends of the Amazons, the warrior women who put all those silly little Greek boys down, and down hard, all the time. The true history of that comes from the Scythians, who were constant and repeated invaders and attackers of the north of Greece, warriors, women and men, who rode horseback with their bows and arrows, shooting anything that got in their way. And this is a cultural phenomenon, a fear that spread through their culture into Rome and through Rome to Britain. But there is a deeper history to this. If we look back at the history and the evolution of human civilization in general, especially urban civilization over the last 4,000 or 5,000 years, we can see a problem that the human race has repeatedly tried to answer. How do we deal with human behavior? How do we deal with human society when human beings begin to gather in larger and larger groups, not just a small village of a couple of hundred people, but a city of maybe 20, 30, 40,000, 100,000, by the time we reach Rome, 1 million people? How do you organize society? And again, we see attempts by primitive early societies to try and resolve these questions. Different societies made different attempts, but urban societies in particular in the Middle East began to establish cultural ideas and cultural attitudes towards women. That women are either to be hyper protected and dressed up in robes and masks and veils to protect them from being snatched on the street, or that women are basically just whores. These attitudes then became embedded in one small religious cult, which was snatched away by the Babylonian Empire. They rewrote their cult to eradicate the strong role of women, and they created their own religious society of the one true God, a male God, obviously, because they inherited it from Babylon, and that gave birth to the modern Judeo-Hebrew religious society, religious state, which in turn led to the rise of Christianity and Islam as those ideas spread out and out and out. And again, back to the Roman Empire, it was one of the carriers of that particular attitude, that set of cultural ideas. So there's a lot of things that got mixed up in the early evolution of human society and human civilization about how to handle ourselves in large groups and how to, if you like, handle sex, handle women, handle relationships with women. You can look at it another way. You can look at how tribal societies were a lot more liberal, a lot more relaxed, a lot more very or totally egalitarian. I mentioned the Amazons, the Scythians, the strong warrior women. You could just as easily look at, say, the history of Britain and when the Roman Empire came up against Boudica and she slaughtered a couple of their legions. There's this how can I describe it? This problem that we face in the modern world today, that we have inherited all of those institutions. So while in reaction to the events a few days ago on Clapham Common, people may talk about changing laws or trying to change attitudes, unless you understand how deeply rooted those attitudes are, you're not going to solve them. Deeply rooted in the institutions of the state, deeply rooted in the way those religious societies that came from the Middle East through the Roman Empire to Britain 2,000, 1,500 years ago are still here and still deeply embedded with a firm grip on the political, legal, and spiritual establishments of our society. They still influence education, they still influence society and law and how government works. And you're not going to be able to solve the problems of sexual harassment of women unless you go right down to the very deep roots of the problem, if you know what the problem is. And that's always been my approach to trying to solve any problem. Go to the deep roots, try and find out where it actually came from and where it's going. It's like weeding a garden. You're going to have to dig out all the roots, and you have to find out where the original core is buried. Roman Empire brought religion, which brought cultural attitudes from the Middle East, which were themselves reactions to strong women and reactions to how human beings live in large, complicated societies. This is not going to be a case of just changing a few laws, educating a few policemen, and maybe putting some CCTV cameras on the streets. This is going to be a case of a long, long campaign of rebuilding and reshaping our society to become saner and healthier, but without going to the other extreme of, if I like, being oversensitive. As I said, I'm, if you like, not a professional. I am, in a sense, an amateur. I have pondered this for many years. I've tried to work out how it can be changed. One of my interests is perhaps creating a new kind of education system for our children, a new comprehensive school system that would be free of religious and extreme political influence. There is much, much, much more to be said. I'm saying this now today simply because I am running this campaign. I know it sounds like I'm jumping on the bandwagon, and yes, I know you say that, but I want you to understand my thoughts. We can't just throw a few crumbs on the table. We have to look at the deep, deep roots of why we face these problems and how we can revolutionize our society to create a saner, healthier, prosperous world for everyone. So thank you for your time and patience. So see you soon. Bye for now.